Okay, so we are live now. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning and greetings. Anywhere you're joining in from, you are welcome to the Africa Venture Studio um, webinar. If you can hear me and you just joined, please let's know those that are here. Just tell us your name, your location, and maybe your startup name. Your name, your location, your startup name, and maybe your expectation from the webinar. So we are waiting. Those that just joined in, tell us your name, your location, and your startup name. So while we are waiting for you, I have with me here Mr. Attila Zigeti. Hope I got that, Attila.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, Pascal. Hi, people. I'm really happy to do this discussion about venture studios. I hope we can discuss a lot of intriguing questions.
Okay. Good to have you here, Attila. So, a brief about Attila. Attila is a venture studio operator and advisor with over 10 years of hands-on of experience. He works with founders and investors in designing and creating new venture studios and improving existing ones. As a former co-founder and CEO of Central Eastern Europe's first venture studio, wow, he scaled the team from 12 to 50 employees and supported the launch of 20 startups, a studio investment holding, a corporate studio offering, and a startup academy initiative. He is the author of the Startup Studio Playbook, which he published in 2016, and Venture Speed, which he published in 2025. Both books are hands-on guides for creating and operating studios. Since 2015, he advised over 27 studios and mentored 300 plus founders and entrepreneurs in residence. Areas of expertise include crafting clear venture studio thesis and actionable roadmaps, building complementary founding teams and leadership talent, designing early momentum, and closing your first funding round faster, developing new playbooks, or upgrading existing venture studio playbooks. Good to have you here once again, Attila.
Good to be here, and thank you for the kind introduction. The point is that I believe venture studios are a really great way that help entrepreneurs to create new companies, especially in regions, in ecosystems where uh, there is not so much critical mass of talent and capital. If you create a venture studio, that can help a lot. And Pascal, I think you should also tell a few words about yourself and why you are doing Africa Venture Studio and how you started.
Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. Because Attila said it, I think a couple of people know me, but for those that are meeting me on a session like this for the first time, I think we have over 100 and something people that registered for this. So a quick introduction about myself. My name is Pascal. I'm a lawyer by profession, but over the past 5 to 7 years, I've been working within the space of startups, venture capital, tech. So I started off from World Business Angels Investment Forum. Nigeria country office, then moved to the Abuja Technology Village. And I scouted for a couple of VC firms, Faster Capital, Level Up Ventures, Go Ahead Ventures, and like. So I worked with a couple of companies in the space of VC, startup, and tech. I also worked with Shuja Capital as an associate, where I have also startup programs, community building, and the like. So we are moving this all of experience and knowledge, including Attila's own, to building the Africa Venture Studio to support startups in Africa and beyond. So it's good to have everyone here, and thank you for finding out time to join us. Hope we are okay now. I hope we are now even in terms of introduction.
Yeah.
So back to Attila. Attila, please can you tell us from your own point of view, what is a venture studio, and why do you think venture studio is important in today's world?
Yeah. I define venture studios as organizations that create or co-create new companies from zero to spin out and even to later growth stages. So studios are not just support organizations like incubators or accelerators, but they are institutional co-founders. That's the key. Studios are co-founders, actual builders of new startups. And if you think about it, the riskiest, the most difficult part of startup building is to find a good enough problem worth solving, to come up with an idea or multiple ideas, to test and validate them, select the best one that are really working, to create the initial product, create the initial traction, put together the team. And this is what venture studios do. And because venture studios do this in an organized way, as a company, as an organization, they will get more and more successful and efficient in this. So without a studio, normally, a startup founder has to go through these steps alone or with their co-founder once, hopefully once. That means that it's a big challenge because, probably they are doing this maybe one or few times. But in a studio, you do this over and over again, so you can learn from your previous projects. You can set up a system that helps you to manage risks, to manage the impact of failure, and thus go from zero to successful companies with a higher success chance.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that insight about studio. So Attila mentioned a couple of points. He mentioned systems to manage risk. And because studios have gone through this a lot of times, they've already built a system to manage risk. Compared to when a startup launches it on their own, they will face a lot of risk because they are practically doing it for the first time. So the studio is beyond just providing support or services for a startup, but then it comes in as a co-founder or a member of the team to fully support these startups, which is what differentiates it from maybe a VC firm, like a traditional VC firm or an accelerator and all of those ones. Accelerator just develops programs and all of those things, and then the VC firm just puts in their funds and maybe gives some support as they want to give, but they are not much that committed when you compare that to a studio, right? I hope I'm right, Attila.
Yes.
Okay, so to the next question, Attila, what is the single biggest operational risk a venture studio mitigates for an early stage startup that an accelerator typically doesn't?
Can you please repeat the question?
So, what is the biggest risk that a venture studio mitigates for a startup that maybe an accelerator or an incubator cannot do for a startup?
There are different answers to this question, but I think the biggest risk that studios can solve is the focus on the right idea. Maybe you experienced this, but if you are an entrepreneur trying to come up or trying to find a problem worth solving or come up with an idea, it is very easy to fall in love with your own idea before you have market results.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is a big risk for entrepreneurs to fall in love with the wrong idea and spend months or even years on something that looks nice on paper, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just not good enough for the market. I have certainly fallen into this trap. But in a studio, we are not falling in love. We are not committing to early stage ideas or problems. We have a list of problems or a list of ideas. We do disciplined experiments, validation effort, and we decide on objective metrics which are the ideas and projects that move forward. So we can filter out a lot of these biases or these kind of entrepreneurial ego questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Attila. So he has mentioned something about entrepreneurs falling in love with their ideas, whether they've proven it or not. But this is why a venture studio is important. Venture studio, we move to test those ideas based on data and facts to make sure that these ideas actually works for the market, not just because the entrepreneur likes it, or is a nice idea, or it sounds nice, the ears and all. So the venture studio comes in to make sure that these ideas are tested before any investment goes through it or any resources is committed to it. So moving to the next question, Attila, how does a venture studio identify and vet someone who will step into a ready-made venture as the founding CEO?
There are different ways to do this. One category is venture studios that create their own ideas from zero. In these studios, we can have people called entrepreneur in residence or venture partners or venture directors. So there is a lot of way to call this role. But basically, the purpose is to have entrepreneurs within the studio working together with the studio, using the studio's playbook to find problems and generate ideas. In this role, what is important to find people who are entrepreneurial, so they can talk to customers, they can go out of the building and hustle a little bit if it is needed. They can understand customer needs and translate it into good enough problem or solution definitions. But it's also important for these people to be able to take guidance from the leaders of the studio, who are usually more experienced. So they have to be team players. The other big category is studios that look for early stage startups that already exist, and they join them as an institutional co-founder. So maybe you have one co-founder, you are working on your idea, but you are missing some resources or network or knowledge, and you join the studio and they become like your third co-founder. In this case, it's also important for this external startup team to understand, to have the mentality to look at the studio as a co-founder and not just as a support organization that is passive, that only gives money or infrastructure, but who are actively participate in the evolution of the startup. So I would say the critical or the most important attribute are entrepreneurial spirit. I prefer entrepreneurs who have the kind of sales attitude, talk to customers, find customers, sell the product that the startup is building, and the ability for teamwork within the studio organization.
Okay. Thank you very much, Attila. Though you were breaking at some point, I think it's the network. But then, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me, Attila?
I can hear you now, Pascal.
Can you hear me now? Attila,
hello.
Hope you can hear me. You can hear me?
I can. Yes, now it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think.
Okay, so the next question is measure its success in the first 12 months.
Sorry, Pascal, could you please repeat? I didn't hear you.
Did you get my question, Attila?
Hello?
Yeah, did you hear my question?
Sorry, you were breaking up. Could you please repeat the question?
Okay, I'll come again. How does a venture studio measure its success in the first 12 months?
How does the venture studio manage the resources?
Measure its success in the first 12 months of working with a startup.
Well, if we look at, but for me, success in a venture studio is, creating a company that can get revenues or follow on funding. So the number one success metric is the number of these good or healthy spin-offs. Depending on the focus, the market of the venture studio, they might have a venture production process that goes from zero to spin out. In in a different timeline. If you, for example, have a studio that builds software solutions or mobile apps, then maybe your whole venture production process is only 3 to 6 months. But if you create hardware solutions or deep tech startups, then it might be 18 to 24 months or even longer. So so in the first 12 months for one startup, it depends on the market, but I think the venture production process has different stages and stage gates. And to me, success is if the studio only lets through new startup projects following this process.
Okay, thank you very much. So Attila has explained that depending on the startup and the time of months for a deep tech startup, it might take longer, and depending on what the startup is working on. So going back to the next question, so where do best ideas come from within the venture studio? Is it from internal experts or a mix? Where do studios get the best ideas they work with?
Yeah, that's.
You get my question, Attila?
Yes, I understood the question. The answer is it depends. Coming up with ideas is easy.
Did you hear
I
the
think
question?
yes. So the ideas are easy. A more difficult question for a studio is to make a decision about what market or what technology to focus on and what problems to solve. Once you decide on these, once a studio finds a good enough problem area, then it will be easy to generate new ideas that addresses that specific problem. There are a lot of different ideation methods for studios and for entrepreneurs in general. You can, if you have a problem area, you can simply look at the main competitors or the main incumbents who work around that problem area. Then you can find patterns. You can find the companies and the clients who have that problem. Then you can do customer discovery interviews with them. You can make your market research and identify the gaps where there is no good enough solution in the market. And then the studio can apply different methods and processes like design thinking, lean startup, to have actual ideas that they can then validate. I think we lost Pascal, so I will just extend this answer and hopefully we will get Pascal back. So in a normal studio, you have this discovery process, constantly looking for more and more problems and opportunities. Then you can apply the different ideation processes. And once you select and score ideas, you can then proceed to creating validation experiments, landing pages, customer surveys, fake door tests, prototypes, and so on. And in each of these stages, you can measure the results. And then you can simply decide between different ideas and only let through the better ones. Pascal, I think we lost you, but I kept going, so uh, I gave a long answer to your question. But please, Pascal, could you please
Yes.
tell us a few words about what you see as challenges and opportunities for African entrepreneurs and startup studios? I've worked previously with one or two studios and entrepreneurs from Egypt and from Uganda, but I don't understand the full picture. So maybe you can help us understand the
Okay, so thank
opportunity.
you very much. Thank you very much, Attila. So basically for the African markets, um, the startups, the venture studios. So I'll start with the entrepreneurs and the startups, right? Because every entrepreneur will tell you um, their first major problem is funding. That's normal for every entrepreneur. But within or beyond that funding, um, there is not an enabling environment for startups, especially. In fact, I think last week I still had a discussion with someone. I think in the US or Canada. He's a diasporan who wants to move his business to Nigeria. So in the African um, ecosystem, not just Nigeria, there is a lot has to be done in terms of an enabling environment for entrepreneurs to
Mhm.
thrive. So entrepreneurs to thrive. So this moves from the regulations. So it
I
starts
see.
from the regulations. Most regulations do not support startups. Most regulations do not support. In fact, there are no focused regulation, unlike in the US, where government have um, the intentional focus or make intentional decisions or make intentional laws to support startups. But here, a lot of the regulations are not focused on creating an enabling environment for these young businesses, and then the businesses even still facing even like the most basics of challenges, like
Mm.
you see businesses still struggling with even access to electricity, like access to good electricity, access to good internet. Then for those that deal within the logistics, there's a lot of logistics problem and all of those things. So for me, I will summarize that under one point is I'll summarize it in a point that the startups and entrepreneurs do not have a good enabling environment, and of course this includes the regulations, the facilities to support them, internet, and all of those things. Then of course access to good funding, and then a supportive network. So in the US, if you are close to the Silicon Valley, the you can meet a very good CEO just
Yeah.
like that. You push your idea, like it's so built as an ecosystem that it supports businesses or entrepreneurs that are ready to build. But here, even when you're building your idea, you are still probably still struggling to keep the light on and a lot of all those things. Right? So that's why we are coming in as the Africa Venture Studio to see how we can solve a couple of these problems. Of course, we cannot solve all, but with the with the network and with conversations like this that help us get a lot of people into the ecosystem and into what we are doing, we're able to provide some solutions where
Yeah.
we can also support with creating some policies. Okay, I belong to a couple of bodies like the FCT Youth Legislative Arm and
Mhm.
all. So there are some places we can push and see how much we can do from there. But it starts from a conversation like this. These are what startups are facing. And if XYZ is going to be created for startups, these startups will survive and of course they pay their taxes to the government. It benefits the government and everyone generally. So for us, it's the enabling environment to create really good startups, the supportive community, a vibrant ecosystem, and all. It's still growing and it's still going to keep growing. But then we really need to speed up things. Then for the venture studios and accelerators, I think the venture studios and accelerators almost face similar challenges. So over the past 12 to 15 years, right?
Mhm.
I've seen a couple of incubators and accelerators rise and fall
Yeah.
because yes, it's not sustainable. For venture studios, we have very few venture studios in Africa. So it's just of recent, maybe over the past 5 years, that a couple of them are cropping up and a couple of them are entering the continent, maybe from the US or the UK and all. But those that have been on the continent, incubators and accelerators and all, they've not been sustainable. Is either they do not have a sustainable means of income to keep the lights on.
Mhm.
So whenever they run out of funds, they just shut down. So there have been a couple of incubators and accelerators like that who are not able to keep things going, and they end up ending, or maybe they end up not even doing much. So I worked with a couple of them, and
Mhm.
things have slowed down over the past couple of years, right? Because these things are not built on sustainable income sources. Some of them depend solely on maybe government grants or maybe grants
Mhm.
from organizations and all. So they do not build like sort of its own independent sources of funds to keep it sustainable over the long term. So those are some of the challenges we've seen over the past couple of years. There are so many incubators, and as far there are, for Nigeria alone, I think there are over 100 of them in Nigeria, but then very few are functional because it's not sustainable. So
Yeah.
those are basically the challenges for the accelerators, venture studio, and the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and just to reflect that, I think this is a big pain point, not only in Africa, but I remember that when we started our studio in 10
Mhm.
years ago, uh, we had very similar challenges. There are local investors, but it was hard for us to convince them about our studio. Um, we had challenges finding entrepreneurs who know what a studio was and who believed or accepted this kind of methodology. Uh, the regulations were not the most friendly or easy. For example, to create new companies with low cost. Now, I think we made progress, but yeah, I think these are very valid challenges, and it's very hard to solve these. If you want to create new venture studios, if you are creating your own venture studio in almost anywhere, you have to do a lot of effort into telling people what venture studios are, how they work, what is the philosophy behind it. And even then, uh, uh, raising funds will remain a challenge. Yeah, but I think we are making progress in this whole studio world. So maybe in a couple of years it will become easier to do this.
Yeah, sure. We are really hoping on that because we cannot overemphasize the importance of venture studio, especially in this part of the world where our entrepreneurs need a lot of support. Because
Yep.
that's the reason why maybe people try out entrepreneurship and they feel it's too hard, the regulations are not friendly, the environment is not friendly, everything is against them. They just dump it and maybe move to another country to find a better life and all of those things, right? But then we are trying to see how we can make the situation sort of better from our side.
Yeah.
So
So
moving
maybe,
to
yeah, please
okay,
go
I want to
ahead.
say something. So moving to the next discussion question. At what stage does a venture studio or a venture studio backed company typically seek external funding? At what stage does a venture studio backed company typically seek external funding?
That's a great question. And with every element of studios, uh, it depends how the studio exactly configures its process. But I would say a good generic answer is that if studios, if the studio builds new ideas and projects and startups from internal processes, then raising a seed fund or raising investment at the stage of the spin-off is a really good idea, because that means that as a studio you can start working on a problem, start working on an idea, doing some validations within the studio. uh, so you don't have to create a new legal entity, a new company immediately, but you can have these internal projects until you are sure that it is a good idea, so your validation is successful. Then you can build up your team inside the studio around this idea and start looking for a potential investor uh, who might be willing to invest into this project. And when you agree, when you found that investor, then you can do the spin-off, so the creation of a new company, together with uh, getting that investment. This is how we did it in our studio between 2015 and 2020. Basically, we had internal projects. Some of those started to generate traction, revenue. We were already in contact with our local investors. So once we saw that some of these projects are starting to become successful, then we went back to these investors for fundraising. We were actually going together with our entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneur, the leader of that startup project, and our studio leadership were together in the room with the investor, doing the fundraising together. And once the investors said yes, then we went ahead to create the new companies for those projects. And that, to me, is a very effective and cost-efficient way of organizing a studio, because you will only spin off companies that have traction internally and that have an investor. So if neither of one of those is not present, you can delay or you can save that kind of cost that comes with creating a new company. So I think that's a good starting point. Create a new company and involve a seed investor in one step of your process.
Thank you very much, Attila. So just a quick stop. Let's hear from the audience. So everyone here, I can see that there are a couple of people here. If you are just joining in or you've been here, please, we want to get to meet you. Just tell us your name, maybe your first name, your location, and your startup name. You can see a couple of people in joining this live session. Please just tell us your name, your location, and your startup name. And if you have any questions for us, you can send in your questions now as we are rounding up. If you have any questions for Attila or myself, this is it. Entrepreneurs are shy, don't want to mention their names. So we want to meet those here. Don't be shy. You guys pitch to investors. So you have to start learning from here. Those that are here to pitch, we'll still have a session on pitching and how to prepare for investment, your pitch deck, and all of those things. But we want to start meeting you here. So just tell us your name, location, and your startup name, and then send in your questions. We round up now. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So Attila, what does a successful exit look like for a venture studio? Is it primarily acquisition by international players, or are there more localized exit opportunities?
It can be both. There are some studios that prefer to have equity in their startups and support them from zero to spin-off, and then from spin-off to a full acquisition, like a nice big exit, creating a unicorn. But there are also studios who take a more grounded or pragmatic approach, and they say that, okay, our main strategy as a studio is to create companies, grow them to a certain stage that can be 10, 20, 50 million dollar valuation, and make an early exit. So instead of trying to find the big unicorns, they optimize themselves to produce companies that have a smaller valuation, but that can be achieved more realistically. But it's also an option, usually it is an option for studios to spin out their companies and at certain stage, let's say maybe during Series A or Series B investment, sell the shares that they have in the startup to generate, to get back money and capital so they can reinvest it. So, it is, again, with the studios, it depends on how you configure your system. But yeah, the studio itself usually is not exited. So I think most people who create a studio, they want a system that will run for 5, 10, 15, 20 years without selling the studio itself to a larger buyer.
Thank you very much, Attila, for this. So, the studio can explore so many easy channels, including primary acquisition by international players, or maybe going public for startups and all of those things. So, we are moving to the last question before we round up. Why should an LP, why should a limited partner choose to invest in a venture studio fund over a traditional VC fund?
Okay. Well, that depends who that investor is. I tell you a short story and then I will give a proper answer. When we created our studio fund in 2017, we found that it is very hard to convince traditional investors to put money into a studio. Normal VC firms are better to invest in the spin-off companies of a studio rather than directly into the studio. So what we found out, what the strategy we used is that we were looking for angel investors who are also active in larger VC funds. And we told these people that, hey, invest into our studio fund. And in this way, you will have full information access into the new startups that we are creating. You can look at these companies from the very beginning, how we do the validation, how we find the entrepreneur, how we build the team, how they are working together. So when these new startup companies will eventually spin out from the studio and start to raise a new funding round for themselves, you will have all the information immediately, so your VC fund can make an easy decision. So basically, our proposal was that join us in our studio fund as a way of generating a trusted and high quality deal flow for your bigger VC funds. That was, and it worked. For us, it worked. Sometimes the investors who put money into studios are not only in it for the money, but they want some kind of strategic impact or strategic access that the studio enables. This is, for example, why more and more companies are working together with studios to create new startups in markets that is important for the corporation. Because in this case, the studio can help the corporate sponsor with this kind of outsourced innovation or startup building as a service. So the short answer is that investors should look at studios as an investment vehicle if they if they want to achieve some kind of strategic impact.
Thank you very, very much, Attila, for that explanation. So, in summary,
I have maybe one last question for you. Tell us a little bit about Africa Venture Studio. What kind of startups are you building, or do you want to build? And who are the people that you are looking for? I'm really curious to learn about your studio.
So, thank you very much for that, Attila. So, the Africa Venture Studio, of course, we are very, very interested in startups that are actually creating impactful solutions that actually solve problems. We are looking at startups from EdTech, we are looking at startups from health tech, we are looking at startups from fintech, we are looking at startups from the agricultural sector. So these are sectors that we feel have the highest impact. Of course, we also open to really good startups from AI and Web3, because these are technologies that have the highest impact and could solve huge amount of challenges on the continent in terms of education, in terms of unemployment, in terms of health, and access to payment for businesses and all of those things. So we are open to solutions around this area, and we are creating the pipeline to attract a couple of these solutions into our studio. We are working on launching a couple of our programs by Q1 of next year. So startups here can follow us on social media. We've also created a community for startups. So for those that register to join this session, the registration should have led you to our WhatsApp group, where we share resources and some tools for startups that help them in building until we formally admit them into studio. So even if we are not working with you directly, indirectly we are still sharing some resources or some tools or some insights that will help you keep building on your idea until we admit you into the studio. So that's basically that. I don't know whether I missed any part of your question.
No, perfect. And thank you for doing this. I really hope that we will see a lot of new successful companies coming out from your studio.
Yeah, sure. So we are open to collaborations to see this happen. So that's why we are having this session. We are open to collaborating with companies or studios or investors, whether in the US, in the UK, in Budapest. You said you are in Budapest, so we are open to international partners to make sure that we provide the best of value to not just African startups, but startups across other clients to the best we can do. So that's basically about that. So in rounding up, so we are rounding up this session. So Attila, I don't know whether you have some advice for startups here and maybe some potential investors here. So what's your final advice for startups here, for potential investors?
There is a lot of knowledge available on the internet for free. So if you are interested in studios, in this kind of methodology, Google it, spend a few days on, reading all the books white papers, blog posts around studios. If you have a specific market focus, maybe fintech or agriculture or logistics or whatever your favorite topic is, where you want to build your company or where you want to invest, you can easily find a few good, successful studios, maybe not in Africa, maybe in the Middle East or Europe or the US, but wherever those studios are, you can research them on LinkedIn, on their company profile. Probably you can learn a lot about them. So you can find out very easily what the main building blocks are for a studio that is successful in the kind of market where you also want to operate. So maybe this is a cliche, but do your research, find out whatever you can about studios in your area, then hopefully you can replicate it for yourself. But as a warning, creating a new studio, joining a studio as an entrepreneur, investing into a studio as an investor needs this kind of research, because studios are new, studios are unique, they have a lot of potential, but you need to take into consideration that studios are not simple incubators or accelerators, but institutional co-founders. They have complex internal processes. So as an entrepreneur or as an investor, you need to get to know the people who run the studio. You need to look at how they exactly do what they promise to do. And then if there is a good trust between you, then you can negotiate either the investment deal or the entrepreneurial deal. And then you should look at the studio as builders, co-builders of studios.
Okay, so thank you very much for the advice. So for everyone here, founders here, thank you for creating time for joining this session today. Please remember to join the WhatsApp channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel here so that you get notified when next we are going live in 2 weeks time. So we go live every 2 weeks to share important information with startup on webinars like this. Thank you very much also Attila for creating our time to join this session, to share your knowledge, to share your insights, to share your experience that you've gathered over the past decades working around Venture Studio. So once again, thank you everyone. Till we meet again in the next session in 2 weeks. Thank you everyone. Thank you Attila once again.
Thank you again. Wish you best of luck. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye everyone.